The Cathedral of Grenoble was built in 13th century and it has gone through many extensive rebuilding up to 19th century. It has got many historical connection with Father Eymard. After a failed attempt in 1829 to join the Oblates of Mary Immaculate at Marseille, Eymard retained his desire to become a priest. But his health was poor, his parish priest thought he was lacking in spirit, and his dying father had wanted him to take over the family business. In 1831, soon after his father's death, Eymard put his past behind him and set out from Namur with intentions of entering the diocesan seminary at Grenoble. On reaching Grenoble, Eymard went to the cathedral to pray. At the entrance, he met Julian, the influential founder of the Oblates. Eymard had known Julian during his brief period at Saint Just in 1829. Julian agreed to take up Eymard's cause and subsequently intervened to ensure that Eymard was admitted to the seminary. This meeting of Eymard and Julian at Grenoble Cathedral is an example of how Eymard's journey was seemingly blessed by extraordinary and providential circumstances at critical point in his time. When Eymard set out from Namur to Grenoble, he was, as biographer Donald Cave has said, without a recommendation of any sort. Eymard was obliged to begin his journey in darkness and in faith. Grenoble Cathedral is significant for its close association with the two priest saints, Peter Julian Eymard and his friend, the Curé of Ars, Jean-Marie Vianney. Both men were ordained in the Diocese of Grenoble and are commemorated by statue in Grenoble Cathedral. In the cathedral, at the side, we see a small chapel where we find the altar on which Father Eymard was ordained. This cathedral was very important to Father Eymard, where he encountered the providential care of God to enter into the seminary life. For about 1 kilometer distance from the Cathedral of Grenoble, we see a historical adoration chapel. When Father Eymard was alive in the middle 19th century, the chapel was in the pastoral care of missionaries of La Salette, and later the building was occupied by the Sisters of Our Lady of La Salette. St. Peter Julian Eymard celebrated his last Mass at the Adoration Chapel in Grenoble. Shortly before his death in 1868, Eymard made his final journey from Paris to Namur via Lyon and Grenoble. At around 11 a.m. on 21st July 1868, he reached Grenoble. Partially paralyzed from a stroke a few weeks earlier, Eymard was seriously ill and near to death. He went straight to the Adoration Chapel and asked the missionaries of La Salette for permission to say Mass in their chapel. The resident priest, Father Pierre, saw that Eymard could not stand up, but he recognized that Father Eymard is really willing to celebrate his Mass. With Father Achier's assistance, Father Eymard completed the celebration that meant so much to him. Father Achier later said, "I practically carried him in my arms when he left the altar." Close to it, we find the seminary where Father Eymard studied for his priesthood between 1831 and 1834. At the timing of his ordination by the Bishop of Grenoble, Philippe Ebrouillard, on 20th July 1834, Grenoble Cathedral was unavailable due to repair work. Because of this situation, Eymard's biographer André Gueton has concluded that Eymard was most likely ordained in the Grenoble Seminary Chapel and not in the cathedral. The Curé of Ars, Saint Jean-Marie Vianney, was also ordained in this chapel. In his youth, Eymard desperately wanted to learn Latin so that he could become a priest. At first, Eymard's father discouraged this interest because he wanted his son to work in his family business, pressing oil from nuts. Eventually, his father relented. At the age of 17, Eymard was allowed to accept a position in the domestic service of a chaplain at the hospice of Saint Robert, about 6 kilometers from Grenoble, in return for lesson in Latin from a priest. The arrangement was not a success. In August 1828, when he received the news that his mother had died, he returned to Namur and went back to his old job. His experience at Saint Robert had been a bitter disappointment, but he was still determined to become a priest.